Now, for those of you who follow me, you pretty much already know what I'm getting ready to talk about and what I'm more than likely going to say. For those of you who do not know, I go by the name of Rubia Garcia. About 2 years ago, I did a video on social media in support of Black Lives Matter and Tamir Rice because I'm an educator. And what I saw on that TV screen was one of my students being shot in cold blood. From that moment forward, I understood my role came with certain responsibilities, and several of my followers have been asking me, questioning as to whether or not I was going to speak on the Virginia protests and everything going on. I sat back the last couple of days and just kind of taken it all in, and now I'm finally ready to give my piece on it and speak my piece on it. And I'm trying to sit here and process it all because as a historian myself, I'm trying to rationalize not just what these people are doing, but I'm trying to rationalize the people who are sitting there either supporting them or the people who are sitting there in silence. I'm trying to grasp where you're coming from, sitting back, just kind of waiting. But now I'm finally ready to put this out there. I made a post last night, and we're talking about these historians, these people that are trying to support these monuments like Robert E. Lee, which is what sparked all this controversy in Virginia. We had a similar situation here in New Orleans, right? They wanted to remove the monuments of PGT Beauregard, Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, and the Liberty Place Monument. Over the summer, we wind up getting rid of all of these things. They're all gone now, right? Now we have a similar situation in Virginia. And here we go. There's an issue with it, right? Can everybody hear me? I want to make sure that everybody can hear me before I get this started, because sometimes I have issues with my sound. So go ahead and please somebody tell me that you hear me. It's just funny because these are people that want to promote or preserve history, right? So you want to preserve history, yet I don't see you, like in the post that I made last night, I don't see you sitting out there in the African American History Museum here in New Orleans. In 2013, 2014, it was supposed to be closed for 9 to 10 months for renovations. It is now 2017 and the building is still not open. $6 million, the building is still not open, but I don't see people throwing a big fuss about that. I don't see people really upset about all that. I don't see you doing with your tiki torches and making sure that everybody else's history is always being preserved and being shared and all these things. I don't see the outrage behind any of that. No, because it doesn't fit your narrative. I would love to be able to bring my students to a museum that represents their history, that represents their culture, because I do teach predominantly Black children. I don't see any kind of outrage when it comes to things like that. Let me organize a rally and a protest, and let me see how many of you Tiki Torch Traitors are going to go ahead and show up for all of that. You want to honor historical figures so much, yet you walk around the city of New Orleans. I don't see any large monuments throughout the city that represents, they have small ones of like, Ruby Bridges or something like that, or Homer Plessy, or the millions of slaves that were kidnapped and massacred on the travel to New Orleans or the travel to America or being in America, the ones that were raped and murdered and sold down the river and all this. I don't see any monuments in their recognition, but yet you want to sit here and talk about Robert E. Lee and preserving history. No, you want to preserve your own version of history. You want to preserve the whitewashed version of history. That's what you want to promote. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the obvious hypocrisy, the Colin Kaepernick situation. So you're offended by somebody like Colin Kaepernick, who is peacefully protesting, taking a knee against all of these atrocities inside the country, about the great disparity and equality between blacks and whites. You're offended by him taking a knee, but you're okay with Black people taking a bullet. That's number one. You're offended by him taking a knee, or you're offended by somebody standing on an American flag as protest. But you're okay with a group of white people, white nationalists, and the media playing them as white nationalists. You're okay with these people tramping around in American cities, harnessing a Confederate flag and a swastika flag. Really? So let's go ahead and let's talk about those things. How about that? Let's talk about the Confederate flag, number one. The whole motives, whatever the means were, the cause of the Civil War is absolutely 100% irrelevant. Whether you want to say it was the industrialized North versus the agrarian South, you want to say it was over taxes, you want to say it was it doesn't even matter what it was over. You want to know what matters? Them seceding from the Union was a direct violation of the Constitution. Therefore, Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, and the like, and anybody who fought for the Confederacy were traitors to the United States. Yet you're running around carrying around the Confederate flag, and that's not unpatriotic. Power to patriots, that's not patriotic. You're a domestic terrorist. That's what you are. I don't care what I know. I'm under no misconception about what I look like. I'm a blonde-haired, green-eyed white girl, but I'm not going to be Ray Charles to the bullshit just to save your little feelings, to spare your little Colgate toothpaste feelings. The reality is, it is what it is. Sorry, I keep getting interrupted by phone calls. But what I'm trying to say is, you want to say, and I'm tired of people saying that that flag was representative of the South. First of all, out of maybe the roughly 5.5 million people in the Confederacy, about 3.5 million of those were slaves. I highly doubt that that flag is representative of 3.5 million of that population. Highly doubt that. And I don't even want to hear this bull about people jumping on my thread saying, well, there were blacks that fought. Man, save it. Miss me with that. You could take a whole Confederate stadium full of seats with that nonsense, because I'm not trying to hear it and nobody else is. So getting to this, these people are literally not patriots. They're Benedict Arnolds of the 21st century. And if you don't know who Benedict Arnold is, he is dubbed America's first traitor. So I suggest you go ahead and look that up. But also the other fact is that these people are allowed to walk around basically carrying this flag like a participation trophy. You lost. We lost. The South lost. Thank God we lost, because there is inherent wrong in thinking that you can own another individual, thinking that you can rape, murder, separate families, and do all of these things, mutilate people. But you want to tell black people that they need to get over it. No. We want to honor history. We want to preserve history. Then stop teaching a one-sided, slanted version of history and look at it at its entirety. Up until we start to do that, this is going to be a problem in America. First step of fixing a problem is recognizing that they're in one. But it is clear and apparent to me and to thousands of other people, hell, millions of other people in this country, that there is an inherent wrong within this country currently. So let's move on to the next one. The swastika, the Nazi symbol of Germany. We already discussed all this. We had an entire world war. Maybe you heard of it, called World War II. We settled all of this. Cost the lives of over 60 million people. 50 million is presumed to come from China alone. Almost 500,000 were American military and civilians. New Orleans, the World War II Museum, the National World War II Museum. You could walk in the museum, and you want to know the significance of me walking into the National World War II Museum and seeing a swastika? It's history. It doesn't belong on the streets. But we sat there, we're watching this on national television. National television. We are watching people literally, legit, walking around with the Confederate flag as if that's patriotic. And you're walking around with the flag of the Nazi symbol of Nazi Germany. Really? But again, you have a problem with Colin Kaepernick. You have a problem with somebody stepping on an American flag, and you don't see the disconnect here? Common sense is pretty common, at least to those who have it. And apparently, you must have missed these lessons inside of your history class, which I can't necessarily blame you to a certain extent, being that public school education, vastly minorities and poor whites don't receive really good public education because they don't have to learn history in order to go on to the next grade. But that's a whole other subject. So let's move on. So herein really lies the problem for me. You want to call these people white nationalists, when in reality, the only thing that they are is thugs. You want to call blacks who protest, the Black Lives Matter who protest, and these people are out in the streets literally murdering people. And these people are called white nationalists, but anybody who does that is called a thug. That's ridiculous to me. That's crazy to me. I'm still trying to process this in my head. So here we go to the problem that I'm having, and that I raised the point up in my post last night. I have tons of white friends. I have friends of all ethnic backgrounds. Give me 1 second, because I have to plug up my phone before my phone dies. I have friends of literally legit all different ethnic backgrounds, right? But what I see is an issue with the color, right? So when I go to a Black Lives Matter protest, I shouldn't just see black people and it's sprinkled with whites and a couple other people. What I should be seeing is a plethora of everything because it's a problem for everybody. But what I'm seeing, literally when I do Black Lives Matter protests, I sit there and there's out of 100 black people, there may be like 5 or 10. Now, I understand some of your fear. I can almost hear the racists and bigots in my inbox typing away, going to threaten my life or the life of my kids or my job. I've been doing this for 2 years. I can't even quantify. I don't have enough phalanges, fingers and toes, in order to tell you how many times I've had my life threatened or my job threatened for what it is that I stand for. The fact of the matter is, up until more white people, people that look like me, stand up and once again, stop being Ray Charles to the bullshit and call things for what they are. Racism doesn't exist. This isn't about race. Then why aren't you sitting here putting up the same type of heat towards historical references as a whole, historical figures as a whole? Where the hell are you? You're not there because it doesn't suit your interest, because what you're trying to do is the same thing that one of the statues in New Orleans, that the first one that they took down, the Liberty Place Monument, down at the bottom, and it said it, I want to say, until 1993. And it was erected in the late 18th century, and it stayed up until then. It said that the North had to recognize white supremacy in the South. No, the hell it did not, because you lost. That flag you're carrying around is nothing more than a damn participation trophy. It does not represent Southern culture. It doesn't represent my culture, and it doesn't represent the African American culture here down in the South. But up until white people, and I understand I shouldn't be blamed for something that people like me did centuries ago. I understand that argument because I get it all the time. I get judged all the time. But this is not about you. This is where the disparity comes in between White Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter, which is what the white people were literally screaming and protesting in Virginia. White Lives Matter, as if white lives never mattered. Because you were the ones that were raped, kidnapped, murdered, sent thousands of miles away from your home in order to work for other people. And then only to go through centuries of the Negro Holocaust, well, not centuries, but decades of a Negro Holocaust, and then have to go another century before you could even get equal rights within education and jobs. Yeah, because white lives never mattered. I don't want to hear none of this drama, none of this BS no more where white people get killed by cops. Look at the population disparity. The percentage of whites and blacks, and this is happening. If you look at it mathematically, it isn't right. It isn't equal. Black lives is not saying that all lives don't matter. It's not saying that white lives don't matter. It's saying that for once, maybe it's okay to talk about black lives because we are living in a Black Lives Never Mattered era. Period. End of story. End of story. And I'm tired of having this conversation. Like I said, I started this 2 years ago, and I'm tired of having this conversation. And if I've only been talking about this and I've been going through this and I'm frustrated as I am, and I've doing it for 2 years, I can only imagine how blacks in this country feel, because they've literally legit been saying the same exact thing for centuries. But it took for me to finally hear it. Malcolm X said during the civil rights movement, what is the role of white people? And I kept this within my head, which is why I continue to do what I do. Malcolm X made a statement, and he said that it's not the role of white people to educate blacks on the struggle, because clearly I'll never know what it's like to be black, and no other white person will ever know what it's like to be black. We all get judged, yes, but not to the same degree. But the fact of the matter is, Malcolm X said it's the role of white people to educate other white people. So here's a message to my other white people that are out there. Up until you recognize and take account for what people like us have done historically, up until we own it and we start fighting alongside our black brothers and sisters, change will never happen. Our people, even though I personally believe in one race, I'm not going to deny the fact that other people look at things differently. And the fact of the matter is, up until white people that look like you and me recognize that we were the ones that started this, and we should be fighting just as much, if not more, on the side of blacks in order to fix this problem, change will never happen. It won't never happen. So meanwhile, you're sitting there back in your couch of white comfort and white privilege saying, oh, this has absolutely nothing to do with me. What's it going to take? What is it going to take? Are you trying to see another civil war? Is that what it's going to take? To black people getting to a point where they left with no other option but to get violent? White people are already doing it. But when a black person gets even mildly upset, they get shot, they get arrested, or they get called a thug. That's crazy. How do you not recognize the hypocrisy? You have to recognize the hypocrisy. You can't tell me that you don't see it. This is not even necessarily a message to the white nationalists, or what I'm calling the Tiki Torch Traitors, because that's exactly what they are. These dollar generals. This is more to my people that are out there that are just as outraged. When you look on the TV, you see stuff like that and it doesn't bother you. All the World War II veterans, that doesn't bother you. That you're literally looking on the television and you're seeing people running around with a swastika, and you lost brothers and sisters suffering from PSD, lost arms and limbs, and mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers, and that stuff doesn't bother you? Really? How is this possible? I don't understand the generation that I'm living in. I'm trying to process it, but I'm going to get back to what I'm trying to say. Up until we start fighting alongside them, recognizing the bigger problem, and saying that this is just as much our problem as it is anybody else, and not sitting back and just being like, oh, it has absolutely nothing to do with me, when in actuality it does. It has everything to do with each and every one of us that's sitting out here, every single 5,000 of you that are watching this video right now, no matter what your race, your religion, your socioeconomic background or profession, it doesn't even matter. You are responsible. So I'm calling on you in order to stand out and actually do something. Show up to a protest, write your congressman, go volunteer at a school, show up, do whatever, donate money, donate time, do whatever it is that you can, sign a petition. Anything is better than sitting back and doing nothing, because silence in the face of an injustice is your acceptance to that tyranny. Power will concede nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. That was Frederick Douglass, one of my favorite authors of all time. Benjamin Franklin. Change will never happen until those who are as unaffected or as outraged as those who are. Up until you get just as pissed as blacks in this country about what you're seeing on the television, change will never happen. Period. That's where we are. It is not just your right, it is your responsibility. And the fact of the matter is, I understand why you are scared. I understand your hesitancy, because not everybody's built for this. But thankful for me, I would rather, I'm just frustrated when I see things like people say, well, they just need to get over it. They just need to get over it. I'm white and I'm not getting over a damn thing, because what's wrong is wrong, period. And if I have to, I will do this until my last breath. And if it costs me my life, then at least I know I'm going out with a fight instead of resting in pieces in a coffin. It's time for some people to start thinking about what the hell it is that they believe in and what they're willing to fight for and die for. It's just crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Frederick Douglass. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by those who will accept it. That's crazy. I really don't understand. Again, I'd rather go out without a fight than to rest in pieces in a coffin. Period. Y'all have a beautiful day. I done had enough of it. Done had enough. Teacher life. Mwah.